It is now 7:39, and I call this meeting of the RTM F&B Committee to order. We have members of the RTM Education Committee, and they will formally call their meeting to order when they have quorum, but we're going to move forward nonetheless. Just so that everybody understands the rules of the road, this is a special meeting, and as such, only the items on the agenda can be discussed. And maybe if I can change the order of the meeting so we can get some things done while we're waiting for education to join us. So if there's no objection, I'd like to change some of the order of the meeting. Hearing none, I'm going to move forward. Jenny, do you want to report on the outstanding minutes, and we can at least get those done?
Sure. I circulated. I had a couple typos that I had to fix. I sent around I had the date. Thank you, Bert, for catching the date at the top of the minutes. And I had removed Martha. I didn't realize that she resigned. I thought that she was running the term out, but I took her off of the last attendance. So that was really the only adjustments to the minutes. So if anyone has any comments or adjustments they want to make, let me know.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve both of the minutes? And Jenny, if you have a better shot at seeing everyone, that would be great.
I see Beth.
Peter, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi, Peter.
And do we have a second?
Lisa.
Mark.
Oh, Mark.
Okay. I'm just going to say, if you're against the minutes, turn on your mic and say no. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that it's unanimous, so we can move this along. Hearing no no's, it's unanimous. Thank you all. Next thing, I'm going to give a quick notification, and it's just as well that Duke is here on this. In conversations with Dr. Adley and Duke, chair of the Board of Ed, we've agreed to have a special presentation to 3 RTM committees, being F&B, Education, and Public Health and Safety, on the SSOs on Wednesday, November 30th. The meeting will be held at 35 Leroy because it's better able for them to do the presentation. This is not a public hearing. The decision has already been made by the Board of Ed. This is not a discussion of whether or not one wants guns or doesn't want guns. If that discussion goes, the person will be called out of order. This is solely to have an exchange of information to make sure that everybody is up to date on the 30th. Committees will then meet, and then you can question away anything you want between then and December 12th, as we will be addressing both the SSOs and the capital request that deals with doors on the 30th and on December 12th at the state of the town. And my one thing, which will, I believe Chief Anderson will also be at that meeting. And now to make Duke shudder a little bit, look, I want to have an open and honest conversation there. I understand this is security, so there's certain information that will not be provided in the public forum. But then again, having these security officers is not giving the Nazis the plans of the D-Day invasion, so it should be open for discussion. And it's also not covered with a top secret page, so it's not the files at Mar-a-Lago. So I expect to have a good exchange of information, but there are some parameters that I hope that the groups will abide by. And I want to thank Dr. Adley, Duke, and Chief Anderson for helping us organize this and providing this information to the 3 committees that will be reporting on this. And so on that, Duke, thank you. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Duke?
No, Jack, thank you. We look forward to that, and I think you teed it up perfectly. And anyone, I would suggest between now and then you look at the website where all the information and presentations that we've gone through, they're posted, and also there's, as you all know, access to the videos of the meetings. And if you need help or anything like that, work through Jack or Ed, and we'll make sure we get you what you need leading up to that, so you can be well informed. But look forward to it, and thanks again for everyone's support and work around all of this. I know it's a lot, and as I always say, we're all the busiest group of volunteers I've ever met.
Yeah, I will say that while the RTM does get off the summer, I think that this happened to be one of the busier summers that the Board of Education had. I know they're always busy, but from my conversations with board members, this happened to be a pretty busy one going on.
All good.
So, all right. So, Liza, how are we standing on your committee?
We have 7 present. We need 9 for a quorum.
Okay. I'm going to move forward on this. You can take a sense of the meeting, even though actually you have an unofficial meeting, but sometimes rules can be bent. The first item on the agenda here, and this is partly to tie things up, is to discuss and take action on the transfer of 32 Hoyt Street, aka formerly known as the Curtis property, located adjacent to home school, by the Board of Selectmen to the Board of Ed. And I always mess up the 3 C's, but I believe it's care, custody, and control are the 3 C's. And while this is a RTM Education Committee action, and they can report that there, just to make sure that there is a report, F&B will vote on this. I just think of this as being a loose end. The Board of Selectmen has already approved it. All this information is going to the state. I want to make sure that when we're doing this on the 14th, all the information has to be at the state on the December 1st. So given that after the RTM takes action on something, there's 10 days where anybody can challenge that action. So I want to make sure that we have this buttoned up on November 14th, so that the state can come back and say they can't come back and say, oh, you never transferred the property over to the Board of Ed and yet you're building on it. So, or proposing to build on it. So with that, do I have a motion to move the, to approve the transfer of the 32 Hoyt Street from the Board of Selectmen to the Board of Ed for care, custody, and control? I see Barry as moving. I have to move my screen down to see if I have a second here. Do I have a second on that? Beth, I see Beth on that. Is there any questions or discussions? If there are, the screen, because I'm going to be putting something up later, is I'm not seeing everyone. So if you have a question, just hit your speaker and start talking. Oh, hearing none, are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay, are there any no votes? Hearing none. Are there any abstentions? None. So that passes unanimously. Liza, when that comes back, if you do get a committee, we'll move back there so that you guys can vote on that. But at least we have an RTM committee that has approved it to move that forward.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's the challenging part. So that brings us to having a conversation on the projects. Here we go. And can everybody see those numbers? I got it about as big as I can get it. So I apologize. But are you seeing that on my screen now? Oh, I didn't share it, did I?
Jack.
Yeah. There we go. All right. This is the analysis of the 3 roofs as well as the Curtis property. The way this was calculated is very similar to how the estimates were done for the original estimates that are going on. What we will be doing tonight on these 3 resolutions are amending the amended resolution. Remember, we did one in April, then we amended that resolution for the full amount, and now we're amending the last resolution with doing these add-ons. So that's basically that's there. I do want to make a little bit of a comment. And I had a conversation with David a little earlier today. I believe that the town is we're sort of in a rock and a hard place on these roofs. And the Curtis property is completely different. That was not in the original estimate. That's an add-on based upon the design that they're using. And so using how they calculated that, similar to how the prior estimates were done, I have no problem with. But we're in a rock and a hard place because it would be a disaster to have 2 different buildings construction groups going on at the same time, and having the schools being worked on and then going back and doing the roofs. That being said, I'm not happy with these numbers. Not happy at all. And to go back a little bit on Royal, the original estimate on Royal was $850,000, and we can say various things about Mike Lynch's estimates on roofs. He was pretty spot on. But I understand that inflation and other things could raise this to 1.1 million and possibly add some additional costs on because we're not doing the roof, immediately, and so possibly another 100,000. But at the end of the day, we're coming in at 1.6. And had these roofs not been moved to this project, there are a significant number of costs: architect fees, construction management fees, soft costs, and owner's contingency that would not have been added to this project. It's a roof. And the concept in some of the write-ups that I did that we're doing the HVAC, and that way that's why they're getting involved. No, the HVAC on the roof was in the original project. And so any of the architect fees or construction management fees to get it there on the prior roof should have already been included. These are incremental fees because we're working on a school project that has certain contracts. And could be costing the town any place from $250,000 to $500,000 more. I would hope that we better negotiate what these fees are. That's my own 2 cents on it. But nobody's proposing a change. And we're just hopeful that, similar to the Ox Ridge building, that when we add all these things up, we end up with some contingency coming back. So no reason to discuss it. That will be in my report also, because the other costs associated with this is that we are moving these roofs up earlier in their construction cycle. And because of that, we're losing state reimbursement. And as it stands now, using rough numbers, if I just go on the Henley trade course and add in like design contingency, and so we're talking about $40,000-$50,000 because we're losing about 1% per year, and it's in year 16 currently. Hopefully, when they're building it, it's year 17. But it's about $50,000-$60,000 there. Another 2% on Royal, and another 4% on the 600,000. So it's a little under 100,000 that we'll be losing in state reimbursement. Now, again, worthwhile because we want these schools done. We want the portables gone, and it doesn't make any sense to have 2 construction people going on. But it's important that we recognize that this isn't a straight, there's some incremental or hidden costs associated with this. So after that, that's my comment there. I will be providing it there, but even with all those costs, I'm still saying that I'm in favor of this because it's the only thing that makes sense. With that, I don't know if it's beneficial, but David has done a really great job in going through this. The organization, HHR, has covered this in not 1 but 2 of their meetings. The numbers were just released not this Wednesday, but last Wednesday. And I don't know if anybody else would find it beneficial for David to explain how he did this. I do want to say that let's remember, these were very similar to, especially on the Curtis property, this was exactly similar to how we came up with the numbers for the overall HHR, which is, for the most part, estimates. So David, do you want to add anything to this?
I don't need to add anything unless anybody has any questions.
David,
Okay.
do you want to talk a little bit about the fee structure, though?
No, it's not going to matter. I don't buy what explanations I've gotten.
I get that. I get you may not buy it, but I do think we have a slightly different point of view. That said, Jack, I'm in complete agreement with you that we just have to do this. So,
yep.
Certainly the committee will continue to be as fiscally conservative as we can be on this. And we take your comments to heart. We certainly have had discussions about the fees. And we've gone back and baselined them against other projects. But again, to your point, immaterial, we have to do this work now.
Right. Okay. So what I'm going to, is there any other comments?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Is 20% contingency costs customary in these types of school projects? Is that what we normally build in? It just seems really high.
Well, the way the estimates were designed is there's a design contingency, there's a construction manager contingency, and there's an owner's contingency, and then there's also the escalation. right? The escalation is designed to get you from right today until we are bid. It just happens that those numbers are probably higher than if we had done the project 3 years ago, because you know, we ran into the problem of inflation during the COVID period and access to goods and things. So things like the escalation and the contingencies came out a little bit higher than what was used in the Oxbridge project. You know, maybe we are hopeful that we will get lucky and those won't all be needed.
And I'm going to add on to what David said. I truly buy into that. If we look at what the incremental costs on roofs are, it's gone up about 20% a year. And even though we originally approved the roof in May of 2021, that's just a fact of life. I'm actually hoping that something else happens during the course of this project, is that being that we're not breaking ground tomorrow, and that this is a 3-year project, that hopefully once certain things are under control, and if in fact a recession hits, we may find deflation on some of these costs going on materials. So that's something that could just as well happen, but it's better to be safe and have the inflationary escalation clause in it now. There is one thing, Mark. Yeah, you at one time had a question about some of this. So do you want to ask the question now?
It's not. I think it's different than what you think I'm going to ask it. Did you misspeak when you indicated a 20% cost increase has been realized on roofs in recent past? Perhaps you were looking at the contingency, or did you mean to say 20% increase in cost?
No, Mark, if you look at this, if you look at the cost per square foot, between when Mike Lynch originally bid the Royal roof and the cost per square foot, and this is solely the construction cost, excluding escalation, excluding contingencies, excluding, you know, all that other stuff, the architect fee, which typically comes out of the owner's soft costs section. If you exclude all that and look only at the construction costs, the construction costs were up a little bit over 36% over the 2-year period. The 2 years between when Mike did his original bid on Royal and our most recent 2 estimates that were reconciled together. And, you know, just verbal commentary with Eric, who's unfortunately not able to be on the call tonight. Eric, who's the architect, had said that they had been seeing 20% escalation. So 36% over 2 years is approximately it works out to like 18.7% per annum. So you're spot on the 20% per annum for the construction costs.
Yeah, I'll also add, if you just look at the 2 costs here, I don't know if my arrow is showing up. No, it's not. But if you look at the demolition at $3.75 a square foot and $40, that comes out to, I'm just going to say $44 a square foot. And the original costs that were used in Mike's calculation, I believe, was something like $35.70. So that's almost a $9 increase in those trade costs before we're getting into any of the other costs that might have been part of that. So, I mean, that's why it's just unfortunately reasonable on what's going on.
I think Dave Cravenzola, who's from APO&G, can also, Dave Martin could maybe talk about that, you know, these, like our previous cost estimates, these are built using actuals from the APO&G database and their cost estimator, and also a cost estimator used by our architects, and then those 2 are reconciled. And Dave Cravenzola, do you want to add anything in here?
Just, you know, when we were helping analyze this with Dave Martin, that we were looking at our actual costs that we accepted bids for Oxbridge, which was bid in 2020, and those square foot numbers were about well, we were looking $20 to $22 a square foot. Now we're seeing $32 to $34 a square foot. So again, that's almost a like a 48% increase from what we received bids on to what we're seeing in the market now. So we agree with that that increase that we've seen over the couple of years since those initial budgets were put together.
Thank you.
Mark, now I'm going to put you on the spot. I believe we spoke about like a certain part of the escalation that you had a question on the other. Am I wrong on that? Am I,
I'm
you know what I'm referring to?
I need a little, I'm not recalling.
All right, then we can pass on it. There's no reason to go then. All right. All right. What I'm going to do, because I think it's important that certain parts of this get read, I'm going to ask the first one is on homes, and I'm going to read the first part of it and then not read subsequent resolved, but I'll do that for all three of these so it's in the record. And it is, whereas on April 18th, 2022, the town of Darien approved an appropriation and bond authorization of $1,050,000 for the planning, design, and renovation of the Holmes Elementary School, the initial authorization. And whereas it was determined that the cost of planning, design, and renovation of the Holmes Elementary School was more than that which was authorized by the initial authorization. And whereas on June 6, 2022, the town approved a resolution to increase the initial authorization from $1,050,000 to $24 million for the planning, design, and renovation of the Holmes Elementary School and the amended authorization. And whereas due to further increased costs, the town wants to increase the amended authorization by $1,600,000 to authorize the full amount of the cost of planning, design, and renovation of the Holmes Elementary School. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the amended authorization is hereby increased by $1.6 million from $24 million to $25,600,000, and that the amended authorization is hereby amended in its entirety as set forth below. Right? Do I have somebody moving that? Can somebody raise their hand? Can't see. Oh, I see Mark and Jenny seconding. Is there any discussion on it? Oh, Louisa. Oh, you are doing that? Sorry. Hi, Louisa. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Are there any no votes? Open your mic and say no. I understand because one of our members is in the business, we have one abstention. Thereby, everyone else is assumed to approve this authorization, increase, and bonding. Liza, are you up to 9 by any chance?
No, I'm still at 7, unfortunately.
Okay. This is a little out of the ordinary, but if you would like, why don't you, even though it's not an authorized meeting, and so I'm going to bend the rules, and as long as nobody reports me to FOIA, do you want to take a sense of the meeting and see where your 7 members stand on this? And you can at least report on that.
Yes. For RTM education members that are present, are there any objection to the current appropriation?
No.
I don't object.
I'm not going to make a formal motion since this isn't a quorum, but just to take the temperature, if there's anyone that does oppose, if you could speak up. Seems like no objection at the moment.
Well, at least you have a that says that your committee was in favor in this unauthorized meeting. And we're going to do the same for the rest. And then Krista can yell at me that I violated.
Well, I'll speak with Ed, but it's possible. I mean, hopefully we could have a makeup and see if we. I mean, if the members who weren't present today could watch this meeting, and we could have a speedy RTM Education Committee to vote properly on these items, that might be desirable.
Right. The only thing I have to warn you is that it would have to be on and before November 7th, because effective November 8th, none of us expect.
Right.
So
yeah, the timing's tight. Yep.
yes, absolutely. But it's important to get this done.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to read the next resolution, which is on Royal School, so it's in the record. Whereas on April 18th, 2022, the town of Darien approved an appropriation of bond authorization of $1,250,000 for the planning, design, and renovation of the Royal Elementary School, the initial authorization. Whereas it was determined that the cost of planning, design, and renovation of the Royal Elementary School was more than that which the authorization by the initial authorized by the initial authorization, and whereas on June 6, 2022, the town approved a resolution to increase the initial authorization from $1,250,000 to $27,500,000 for the planning, design, and renovation of the Hindley, it should say the Royal Elementary School, the amended authorization. And whereas due to the further increases, the town wants to increase the amended authorization by $1.6 million to authorize the full amount of the costing, planning, design, and renovation of Royal Elementary School. Now therefore be it resolved that the amended authorization is hereby increased by $1.6 million from $27,550,000 to $29,100,000, and the amended authorization is hereby amended in its entirety as set forth below. Do I have somebody moving that motion? Louisa, you had your hand up before, so I'll take it for this one, moving it. Do I have a second someplace along the line? Who wants to second this so we can move this along?
Barry.
Oh, Charles, is that Charles there?
That was I said Barry.
Okay, all right, good enough. Are there any no votes on this? First, I have to ask any further discussion. Seeing none, are there any no votes? Speak loud and clear. There's one abstention. And therefore, I'm assuming that this passes unanimously. Again, Liza, please do a sense of the meeting, or
Sure. For RTM Education members present for the appropriation with respect to Royal 2219, is there any objection?
No.
Any further discussion? Okay.
Yeah, this is Nick Branca from District 4. I just had a question. You know, looking at the third appropriation request, the PowerPoint, you know, and they had some study possible improve, and it sounds like they completed those studies, and you know, any of the potential extra work is already in these numbers. Is that correct, or is there a chance they'd have to come back after more study?
I'm going
as it relates to what? I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe you could just be a
32 point.
little more clear about that. Yeah.
32 point.
In that third appropriation request PowerPoint, you know, it sort of just talks about the Hindley project, and then it says study possibly improve, and it lists extension of bus loop, new entry exit directly onto Route 1, additional parking. And the Holmes project and the Royal project also has those study possibly improved. But then sort of earlier in the presentation, it sort of seemed to say that those, the result of items identified for study. So it sounds like maybe that's already been done and there's not a chance that there would be more money needed for those.
Yeah, I don't think I think for those items, that's right. I think we're really just asking the request for additional appropriation is limited just to the roofs and some of the work that has to be done on the 32 Hoyt property. That was what you saw in the PowerPoint was by way of just kind of a status of where the project was and what was included in the original appropriation as versus what we're asking for now.
But that is accurate. Yeah,
does that answer
is
your
accurate.
question?
That the extension of the traffic loop at Hinley is included in the original base appropriation. It was identified for study, but will be completed with the dollars that we've already received.
Okay, and that's the same for the, the items that were listed under the Holmes project and the Royal project? Because the Royal project also has extension of the bus loop and additional parking.
Correct. Other than the roofs, and when you're talking about Holmes, as noted, some work that has to be done on 32 Hoyt, because when the original appropriation was done, that aspect of the project was still kind of in the to be determined study phase, and so we didn't build it into the budget because we weren't sure if we needed to include that.
Okay, great. No, it sounds like all that study's been already completed, so thank you.
That's correct.
And I'm just going to add, I'm happy that they said that they're never coming, because this is I refer to this project as the Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all, as we're running 3 concurrent school projects at the same time, which is never an easy task in a time of high inflation and other things that are going on. So, and there's drainage studies that are being done on several of these projects, as the committee is well aware of what's been done and cognizant of drainage issues in town, and have been quite responsive, at least on Holmes initially, and in discussions with some of the comments. And so Holmes has had some changes from the initial design as what it was originally shown. So while we're all hopeful that money is never spent, it is, I don't want them to say never and then we're crucifying them later because something unanticipated happened.
We're not going to say never. Don't worry about that.
No, okay, all right. The other thing I do want to mention as I'm getting ready to read the last one is, while we're approving these bondings, we don't go out to market and issue the full bond right away and just have the money sit around. We at least do some of the funding up front out of our general fund, and then we usually do it in tranches of what we spend plus what we anticipate to spend over the next 6 to 12 months, possibly sometimes over 18 months. So I take it that these bond issues, well, we're doing separate resolutions. We'll actually one, and we'll be hitting it at several times over the last, if it takes 3 years, probably over 4 years before we close it out on what goes on. So let me read the last one, which is Hinley, which is, whereas on April 18th, 2022, the town of Darien approved an appropriation and bond authorization of $1.4 million for the planning, design, renovation of the Hinley Elementary School, the initial authorization. Whereas it was determined that the cost of the planning, design, and renovation of the Hinley Elementary School was more than that which was authorized in the initial authorization, and whereas on June 6, 2022, the town approved a resolution to increase the initial authorization from $1.4 million to $26 million for the planning, design, and renovation of the Hinley Elementary School, hereafter referred to as the amended authorization. And whereas due to further increased costs, the town wants to increase the amended authorization by an additional $1,550,000 to authorize the full amendment of the cost of the planning and design and renovation of Hinley School. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the amended authorization is hereby increased by $1,550,000 from $26 million to $27,550,000, and the amended authorization is hereby amended in its entirety as set forth below. Do I have somebody moving that from F&B? Somebody raise their hand, please. I have Mark, and then I have Louisa seconding it. Are there any no's? Speak up or forever hold your peace. I have one abstention. Seeing nobody raising their hands or stamping their feet, it passes unanimously. And Eliza, I allow you to go and do a sense of the meeting on.
Any further discussion or questions from RTM education members on this appropriation? We're talking about Hindley.
Seeing none, I think you're good.
Sounds good.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for their time and that they put in here. I understand we have a lot of things going on. On the 14th, we're really not organized committees, but what hopefully education will have an opportunity to meet. But we will have reports from the former committee. We did that last year for At Home at Darien to accept a gift so things could move forward. Again, there will be a meeting on November 30th. I'm going to get to you, David. David, go ahead.
I was just going to mention on the agenda here, it has discussed rescinding the consideration for the 863 for the Royal. We didn't do that part yet.
Right.
Right.
Because that was appropriated, but it's not going to be, we're not double dipping on the amount we're asking to appropriate for Royal. It's netting, it would, presumably net that down.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure if we needed to do it, that we got it done while we're all here.
What's going to happen is that I have spoken, that's a good catch. We don't have to do anything. I've spoken to, let me give a little background. Good catch, David. The fact of the matter is that there is a bond authorization for $863,000 for the Royal Roof that was 114, and May 21 meeting, which was our budget meeting of that year. That bond issue will be rescinded by the Board of Finance at their meeting, which I believe may be before the 14th of the meeting. And so that's more of an explanation that I put it down there. But the RTM doesn't have to do anything other than going to note that will be rescinded, and that's going to be in my Royal report. Did anybody have a question on that?
So it requires no action.
No action by us. I just put it down there to make sure. I spoke to Jen, which I did, and I wanted to mention it, and I'll include it in our report. Hopefully, I'll be able to report that if the Board of Finance meets between the 9th and the 14th, that rescindment has already. So, yeah, it's a good catch, David. You're absolutely right. We're not double dipping. Thank you. All right. With that, we happen to be 17 minutes away from an hour, which has kept this to less than a 50-minute meeting. So do I have a motion to adjourn? And I want to thank everyone for participating in this. And I understand we're moving forward, but there are certain times that the RTM has to be reactive to what's really going on in town. Are
Hey,
you
hey,
moving
Jack,
that?
before you take a motion to adjourn, I want to take 30 seconds on behalf of the HHR committee to thank you personally and to thank F&B and education for getting everybody together to consider these requests on an expedited and off cycle basis. You've got a lot of things kind of coming together at once between the state timeline, that legislative timeline that we have to work towards, the election coming up, the new RTM being constituted in 2 weeks, et cetera. And so, we really, really appreciate all the effort that you guys have put in analyzing this, commenting on it, giving us really constructive input and moving this through so we can get it approved hopefully on the 14th. So I'd like that on the record, and thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. I think that the HHR committee has been working hard and did a tremendous job. And a week ago, I was over at their meeting and very impressed with the level of conversation and the discussion with the neighbors, which is in fact in my district. And so I greatly appreciate that as well. So now, Bert, you were trying to get rid of us now and say goodbye.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I have Barry seconding in that. Since nobody's going to say no, I'll take that as a unanimous decision. Thank everyone from education, the HHR committee, Duke and Dr. Adley for joining us. And that's for those of us who like baseball and are dying that we're actually rooting for the Phillies over the Astros, which is deadly for a New Yorker to do. Enjoy the rest of the evening, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I didn't know
you.
the Yankees were on.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.